Hi there and welcome to Capital View. One rank, one pension. This issue has dominated the news this week and it has become the flashpoint between the government and ex-servicemen. Is one rank, one pension a feasible demand or will it impose an exorbitant cost on the exchequer? Joining us on that question, former Defence Secretary Ajay Prasad, analyst Manoj Joshi and Defence Analyst Brigadier A.K. Mahalingam. Thank you so much everyone for being here. Mr. A.K. Prasad, at the very outset, if I could start with you, do you believe that the demand for one rank, one pension, as a former bureaucrat, do you believe that this demand is justified?
I think the time to ask this question has long passed. Whether it is feasible, whether it is desirable, these questions should have been asked much earlier. The government has taken a decision in the past. It has been announced in the parliament. A certain definition has been agreed to, and now it is not open to be questioned as to whether what should be the definition of OROP, when it should be applied, etc. I think now there are very few options before the government except now to announce a date and implement it.
It simply has to announce a date and it has to announce OROP. Before we proceed further, let me just ask you, Brigadier Mahalingam, to tell us what exactly is one rank, one pension which you are demanding and why is it so important for you?
The one rank, one pension definition has been spelled out in the parliament both by the previous and the present government. The definition is simply that people of the same rank with the same amount of service will receive the same pension irrespective of their date of retirement.
Right.
Why this is important for us is, as you are aware, the ex-servicemen community are aging community and they retire at a very, very early age. They retire at anything from between 35 and some of them till 54 years of service.
Right.
And whereas in the civil service, every individual retires at the age of 60 years. Now, when he retires at the age of 60 years, his pay commission increases, the DA increases, his increments, everything put together at the time of his retirement is much higher. Therefore, today the pension that a peon in the government of India receives is much, much, much higher than a soldier who retires at the service of 15 or 16 years of service.
What the finance ministry is saying, Manoj Joshi, is that this is going to mean a cost of 8,300 crore this year. And if it is pegged to inflation, then OROP will produce an enormous burden on the exchequer and the government will literally go bust.
That's true. I believe that the pension system in the central government, because now it has been since 2004, you have the National Pension Scheme and you have contributory, but where you have direct benefits, if you have the way that is being demanded, and don't forget that the armed forces are still expanding, meaning in the coming plan, the armed forces are set to expand by another 100,000.
Right.
So there are manpower costs that are accruing, and these people will retire. They will be taking their pensions for a very long time. So yes, eventually you may find, and I don't say just the armed forces, I'm looking at the entire central government system. What you will find is that you will not have the money to pay for it.
You simply won't have the money. You simply will not have the money to pay this huge pension bill.
Sagarika, let me say that as far as the finances are concerned, FICCI carried out a study titled Bribery and Corruption, Ground Realities in India. This computed the corruption cases between October 2011 and September 2012. The 2G scam, the mine scam and the CWG scam, and those not reported in the media were not taken into account. Total loss to the government is 364 billion rupees.
There's no shortage of money. Mr. Prasad, let me ask you that. Is there no shortage of money? Rahul Gandhi recently said that, well, if the Prime Minister could promise 2 lakh crore to Bihar as a relief package, as an investment package, and why can't he give OROP? So do you believe that there's no shortage of money whatsoever on the part of the government?
No, in the first instance, what we are talking about is a figure of around 8,300 crores. Now, that is not a sum which is going to break the government's back. What the government and the Ministry of Finance particularly seems to be worried about, what Mr. Manoj Joshi just said about snowballing effect of this year by year, as well as there is a danger of a cascading effect
Right.
on other services. The central paramilitary services have already voiced a demand for OROP. I am sure that many other organizations are going to start asking for more. I am not saying that
So
demand
it'll open a
is
Pandora's
justified.
box. It'll open a
will
Pandora's
open
box. So what
but
if the paramilitary, what if the
Sagarika,
railways,
but
what if they
no.
all want OROP?
No, but let me complete what I was saying. That despite all this demands that may accrue, these questions should have been asked a couple of years back, before the government in 2014 decided to make an announcement that they have accepted the demand in principle, and a token provision of 500 crores was made in the interim budget in February 2014. Now, that was a time to ask all these questions. Having done that, and again, the BJP during its run up to the elections and even after that, at no less a level than the Prime Minister,
Right.
has repeatedly said that they are committed to doing it. So now,
Now
the
that
state,
the BJP has repeatedly said, Manoj Joshi, I'll just come to you in a bit. Mr. Narendra Modi, in the run-up to the elections at that Rewari rally, said that if Mr. Vajpayee had been re-elected for a second term, he would have given OROP, and he committed at that rally publicly to saying, I will give OROP if I come to power. So believe that there's no looking back now for Mr. Modi. He has to give it. He has to give it. You believe he has to give it?
See, at one level, the previous government has made a commitment, okay? At the second level, in coming to power, the BJP, even now, meaning the minister has repeatedly said that we will be giving, just about to come. So they made many remarks there. My point is that my view is, as a former member of the Naresh Chandra committee, that the politicians of this country have handled the armed forces in an atrocious fashion. Meaning they just simply leave it to the bureaucracy to deal with the armed forces. They do not allow the armed forces to be part of the governmental system.
Should there be some negotiation tools that you should also have? Should you be able to negotiate on certain issues, or is it all or nothing? Either you give OROP or nothing.
First of all, let me talk about the escalation factor which Mr. Prasad spoke. The expenditure secretary to the government of India is on record at the Koshari committee meeting when he came up and said that the escalation would be approximately 10%. That is the amount that he has said. You cannot, the government of India says that it cannot offer 10%. Secondly, you must remember in that context that all the veterans are old people. They may live for next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that's it. The second issue is other
On
services.
the Pandora's box.
The Pandora's box. Let me tell you, armed forces are demanding this because they are retiring at an early age. Now, as far as the other services, the BSF, the CRPF, the Government of India servants, everyone retires at the age of 60 years. They receive their pay and allowances up to 60 years of age. The differences between the soldier and the bureaucracy which has been worked out.
They may still demand it. Even if they work till 60, they may still demand that we want OROP after we retire.
You have, this is the very basis on which you are giving is because of early retirement. How then can it be given to anybody else, excepting for the fact the IAS and organized Group A services has used the backdoor entry to get into OROP after serving till the age of 60. This is an impossible and improbable thing.
Okay, Mr. Prasad, as a former IAS officer, let me get you to respond to that. That the bureaucrat is using the back door, the IAS is using the back door to get OROP. They have all the OROP benefits, but willfully, because of contempt for armed forces, because the bureaucrat and the politician looks down on the armed forces, they are denying this to the army.
No, I totally disagree with this kind of a statement. Let me first respond to what Mr. Joshi said, that the Defence Secretary and his colleagues will not talk about pension, they will try to block it. This must be borne in mind that the Defence Ministry has formulated this whole proposal, has supported it entirely and sent it to the Ministry of Finance as far about 3 months back. So there is no question of the bureaucracy in the Defence Ministry.
Is the government in two minds? Are we seeing a difference between the Ministry of Defence and the Ministry of Finance? Is there a problem there?
That has been happening. That is exactly what's happening. And Mr. Arun Jaitley a few days back said that this is a matter of some arithmetical interpretations, etc. are there. Though as far as the Ministry of Defence is concerned and the Defence Minister, they have gone on record that they have formulated a proposal, they have sent it to Finance Ministry and they expected it to be cleared very shortly. Now, the Prime Minister has again and again said that he is committed to it. Now, I don't see the bureaucracy being so powerful as to thwart a man like Mr. Narendra Modi from implementing what he wants to do.
So the Prime Minister has to come and directly implement this.
Yes,
this is now up to the Prime Minister to come and
I think
OROP.
it has gone beyond the level of the Defence Minister or anybody to untangle this. This now requires the direct intervention of Prime Minister, and if the media reports today are to be believed, a meeting is likely and a solution might emerge by 26th. And the ex-servicemen.
So the Prime Minister now has to come and he has to engage directly in dialogue. He has to go over the heads of the bureaucrats and announce OROP. But have the ex-servicemen taken an unnecessarily maximalist position by going on hunger strike, by saying that we have to get OROP, otherwise we will be on indefinite hunger strike in Jantar Mantar? Is that also a slightly maximalist position? Should they be more open to dialogue?
See, I have a dilemma here in the sense that I would not like to see the armed forces in any form, whether they are ex-servicemen or whatever it is. I wouldn't like to see them on the streets for any reason, because when you say ex-servicemen, they just the osmotic effect on the services is very obvious. So I wouldn't like to see that.
But I'm also seeing. You're saying by osmotic effect, you mean that the operational units might also be affected by what the ex-servicemen
obviously,
are doing.
because these are, after all, they are the senior officers and senior junior commissioned officers, etc., who are there on
down the line,
strike.
the army, the serving army could get affected.
It could get affected. Now, my point is, it's very the system deserves to be criticized for allowing a situation where you have had these guys coming out into the streets, because this is a problem which they have created. As I said, if they had not made those promises, then these guys would not have said that you promised us and therefore we are now demanding what you have to give us. So that is a very disturbing
So the promises
scenario.
were made by the government and therefore the government is at fault. But the point is that, should you not have some issues on which you can open a dialogue? For example, there's the issue of the bonds. That you can offer the giving of bonds rather than OROP. You can have the issue of the moratorium, that you give it one time and then impose a moratorium.
Sagarika,
should there not be some middle ground?
Sagarika, tell me one thing. We are old people. There are people who are about to die, 85, 90, 95. What will they do with a bond? They need money for their medical treatment, for them to go and meet people or maybe give something to their own children. What will I do with the bonds? I don't need bonds. We want money. All that is required, the implementation letter needs to be issued by the government of India, and that's it.
So do you believe that the day of dialogue is over?
I believe there is always room for a dialogue. I mean, if you can talk to Pakistan, why can't the government and the ex-servicemen talk?
Should the hunger strike be called off?
It's a very distressing sight to see our veterans sitting in agitation, going on hunger strike. It's extremely distressing. And it's something which the government should be ashamed of having brought the situation to such a pass.
We are asking for a very justifiable demand, which we have been pleading for years.
It's all or nothing. It's all or nothing. And unless OROP is given, you will continue on hunger strike.
People coming on the street because we had no other option.
It's a complete deadlock. Let's take a short break at this point and come back and look at the more worrying question of the complete breakdown of relationship between the civilian administration and the ex-servicemen. That's after this. Welcome back to Capital View. One rank, one pension is the flashpoint between the government and ex-servicemen. Is it a feasible demand or is it imposing too much of a burden on the exchequer? Is the room for dialogue now over? Are the veterans taking a maximalist position by saying, unless you give OROP now, we will continue to be on hunger strike? Is there also, Brigadier Mahalingam, a lack of leadership on the part of the army, on the part of the chiefs? Now, we saw that the 10 former chiefs wrote a letter to the Prime Minister, an open letter to the Prime Minister, when the veterans were treated badly by the police in Jantar Mantar, when the medals were torn, when the shirt was torn, etc. And that was a very anguished letter that the chiefs wrote. But should the chiefs also now come forward and perhaps give a little more leadership?
You're very correct. Let me point out this. As far as the army is concerned, the military veterans and the serving soldiers are all one big family. We have always been told that you will be looked after by this organization. Today, when this happened, I expected the three chiefs to walk up to the Prime Minister and tell them this must be done. And especially that day when the soldiers were beaten up, when a soldier's medals were physically snatched in public view, I think the three chiefs ought to have walked up there and then controlled the situation. It is because the chiefs today have no voice. They are being used by the government merely as a rubber stamp.
Today, at this juncture, there's little else they can do. Okay? All I'm saying is, why are they there? And this is where there must be some introspection within the government. And I personally believe that at this juncture, there is no alternative. The government must announce that OROP, but
the government must announce OROP right now.
I still think that there is scope for large-scale reform in the central government salary system. You know, in the Fifth Pay Commission had said that the government must cut its size by 30%.
Right.
And do you know what happened? It was all sabotage.
Right.
The government of India is much too big. Meaning you are adding tens of thousands.
So the entire pension structure has to actually be reformed.
Pension and salary, rank.
That has to be the next step.
No, rank also.
But for first step, you have to give OROP and then you can think about reform. Is there also, Mr. Prasad, at this moment, what has been hinted at by Brigadier Mahalingam and Manoj Joshi, that a breakdown of relations between the civilian administration and the army, and how dangerous is that? Are army units in operational areas likely to have the effects of this? Are they likely to feel the effects of this? What about the army actually voicing, thoughts of perhaps not wanting to serve in civilian situations of, say, earthquakes and floods if these demands are not met? So are we looking at a very dangerous tension building up here?
Oh yes, certainly we are. And that is the larger aspect of this whole problem, is that it is impacting on civil-military relations, and especially disquiet is now running among the serving personnel in the armed forces. And
disquiet is running among serving units of the armed forces.
And what you mentioned about, they're thinking about not participating in aid to civil government in times of natural calamities, etc. I mean, it has not yet been articulated in that particular form. But yes, the sentiment is brewing, and that is the most dangerous thing, and this must now be nipped in the bud. And therefore, as I said right in the beginning, in my opening remarks, that the option for the government is now only to announce the OROP.
Were you then disappointed with the Prime Minister's Independence Day speech, where he actually didn't give assurances on OROP? Were you disappointed?
You see, we were, most of us were expecting that some kind of a positive statement will come on the Independence Day speech. But the impression one got that PM was showing certain amount of helplessness.
The finance minister spoke of some problem of arithmetic. Could somebody tell me what is the arithmetic problem? They have not come out with these details. They have been working on their own within themselves. They have not even had the courtesy to share it with the three service headquarters to examine their arithmetic.
How can they have a dialogue with you if you're saying there's no dialogue?
Where is the dialogue?
But you're saying because if you are not open to any kind of conversation with the government, if you're not open to any kind of conversation, then what will the government talk about?
I think the Brigadier is right. The point is that if you have certain calculations There is nothing wrong with the finance minister coming out in public and say, well, this is the arithmetic and this is our problem. We are trying to find a way around it or something like that. But so far, there has been nothing from their side.
No, but Nripendra Mishra, the high PMO official, has come and met agitating veterans.
Nothing.
I don't think they've given any sums.
We
They've
don't
not
want
given sums,
anybody
but they've
to
made
meet
a
us.
reach out. You're saying that they should give the hard sums. They should give the hard
indeed,
figures.
yeah, why not? Meaning, if you're talking, see, there is no point going there and saying, "अच्छा आप ऐसा करिए, आप ये भूख हड़ताल तोड़ दीजिए, उसके बाद हम देखते हैं." That's not good enough. You see, that's not this thing. Any PMO guy coming and saying
Sagarika,
that.
I have a
But
solution
Brigadier,
for the arithmetic problem. Let me give you a solution for this arithmetic problem. Get hold of a civilian agency which has got no links with the ministry and give them this task and tell them, please work it out and here is the money and distribute it. And tell them if anything above this or below this happens, you will be held accountable. Within 20 days, you will have everyone receiving their money in their bank accounts. Why are they dilly-dallying? This is primarily to delay, confuse and deny their rights to the soldiers.
Basically, there is contempt for the armed forces amongst the civil servants of this country. Okay? They look down on them. There's a hiatus, meaning famously that there are golf courses all over the country. You'll never see senior army officers and senior civil servants playing golf together. Okay, there is a breakdown in that relationship because the one considers his task is to keep the other guy down. Is to somehow use procedures, and the reason for that is also complex. In the sense, the reason for that is that we do not have an expert civil service. In the sense that the government, in all fairness, and this is with apologies to Mr. Prasad, the government, in all fairness, deserves expert civilian advice in the area of defense,
Right.
as well as expert uniformed advice.
Right.
Now, they get the expert uniformed advice, but there is no expert civilian advice. So, what the civilians do is, as a means of control, they use process and procedure.
Right.
They say you can't do this or this
I
is
think
not
that's a very
permitted.
important insight. That's a very important insight. Mr. Prasad, do you want to just respond to that? The deep-seated contempt is the word that Manoj Joshi has used, that the civilian administration has towards the army. That's a very sad indictment of our constitution. Do you think that is the reality?
With due respects to Mr. Joshi, I totally disagree with that statement. I have been in the defense ministry. I've had the best of relationship with the three chiefs at that time. And Mr. Joshi mentioned the example of playing golf. I have been playing golf in a foursome with the three chiefs for a number of years. But that is neither here nor there. There is no deliberate attempt to keep the army down. And do we seriously believe that after the Prime Minister's commitment and after the commitment of two governments, bureaucracy is in a position to thwart it? I mean, let us be real. What are the problems? I don't know. Whether it is money.
I think that's the issue. I think you put your finger on it. What are the problems? Nobody knows because the government is not telling us why the government is delaying, why the government is not announcing OROP, why the government is not talking to the veterans. No one at this stage knows because the government is now refusing to speak. But we're at the end of the program. I'm going to go across the table and I'm going to ask my panelists, what is the solution out of this impasse? What is the solution?
There is only one solution. Please implement the promises made by the previous and the present government at the floor of the House. That's it.
Implement it now.
Yes.
Otherwise, you will continue on hunger strike. More people will join the hunger strike.
Absolutely.
More people will join the hunger strike.
Absolutely.
Okay. What is the way out of the impasse?
I think you got to implement this now, but at the same time, as I said, you have to have a deep reform of the civil service system. Our civil service is completely out of date. And we need expertise at different levels, different parts of the system. Right now, we are functioning as though we are in the 1950s, the same process. And this is what the army complains. And an army guy becomes a joint secretary, equivalent rank.
28 years of service.
After 28 years, a civil servant in 14 years, I think.
19 years.
19 years. And the army says that we do 4 stages of selection, whereas in the civil service, you go straight through.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is that there is need for a modernization of the civil service
Right. There is a need for modernization. The IAS officer today is getting pensions that are pegged to the salaries of IAS officers of today. But in the army, you get pensions that are not pegged to the salaries that are being given today. Mr. Prasad, what is the way out?
As I said right at the beginning, and I reiterate it, that the government has no option but now to fix a date and announce the OROP. But the modalities of payment, the staggering, the whatever other mechanism, this is something that can be negotiated if the government feels that one-time payment.
The modalities can be negotiated.
That should be negotiated, but the date should be announced.
For people who are in their deathbed, people who cannot walk, people who want money for their medical treatment. I think this is a bizarre suggestion.
No staggering, no dialogue, implement right now, otherwise we will continue on hunger strike. That is the voice coming out of the ex-servicemen, and the OROP question is going to be one that bedevils relations between the government and ex-servicemen, because there is no end to this deadlock unless the government announces it right away. Thank you very much indeed to all my panelists for joining me. Thank you for watching Capital View. We're back next week.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.